Thank you for listening in to Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Hair. Please remember to subscribe, hit the like button and share. Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Hair. I'm your host, Alison J. Today, I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Latasha. Latasha is going to be speaking to us about good hair and scalp health. Latasha is the owner of Snakx Beauty Spa with over 19 years experience and 15 years as a business owner. Latasha prides herself on her standard of excellence in both high fashion and classical hairdressing, living by the theory healthy hair is paramount. Latasha strives to provide guidance to her clients in and out of the salon chair. Known for her seamless extensions, organic product knowledge, and natural hair care techniques, her unwavering belief in continual education and development is the drive behind her force and keeps her ahead of the game. After years of being in the beauty industry, Latasha is one of the most sought after hair care educators in the film and theatre industry. Latasha partnered with Disney's The Lion King musical and IATSE Local 798 Hair and Makeup Union as a hair counselor for hired hairstylists and performers. At the end of this interview, I'm going to be putting up Latasha's contact information. So if you have any questions, need any guidance, or just want to make an appointment to see her, you'll be able to do that. So Latasha, thank you very much for joining us here on Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Hair, to talk about happy, good health, hair, and scalp. Welcome, Latasha.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Alison. I am thrilled to be here.
You are very welcome, very welcome. So, Latasha, I was speaking to you about a week or so ago, and you were just blowing my mind with the knowledge and all of the things really that we are ignorant to when it comes to our hair and our scalp, because a lot of the things that we do today are things that were just passed down from generation to generation that we never questioned, we never looked into, we just continue to do because it was something that was always done. And many of them are not realizing that we're not actually doing our hair and our scalp that much good. So I was just jumped at the opportunity, as you know, to talk to you. But first, tell me, Latasha, what led to your passion for hair? Where did it all start?
It started growing up in the salon with my mom as a stylist and a business owner. And at the age of 13, 14, I was assisting her. And I always said that I would never be a hairstylist, actually. It was something that was not on my, it was not in my future because of the long hours and, just a constant going and standing on the feet as I saw my mom. But over the years of assisting and just learning and working in different salons, being around different hairstylists, I saw the passion and I saw the love, my love for hair grew. And I started, before even going to beauty school, I started educating myself about hair care, because there was a lot of chemical being used. And I remember one experience, they were using a chemical and one of the client was feeling a bit nauseous from one of the other stylists. And I was like, wow, this cannot be good. And that's when my hair health started. And then I went to school just to get the license to perform. And, that's where everything started over the years, continuing education, and now in this time, in this era, I feel like it is important that my education that I've acquired years before, it's now being appreciated, because especially in the African-American community, they're more accepting and appreciative of their hair and the hair care. So now I feel like the knowledge is more, it's there to be given.
And the knowledge is probably more appreciated now because, as you mentioned, that more in the African, Caribbean, African-American communities are embracing their own natural hair and protective styles and things like that. So, because I can imagine, I remember back in the days of the 80s when the perm was the big thing, right?
Right.
And the big hair and the hairspray and all of those things, and not realize, and all the back combing, and not knowing all of the damage that we were doing, because there was, to be honest, just the knowledge just wasn't there.
Yeah. 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 And I was always a kid in a candy store being in the salon. I was always fascinated, like, why did the relaxer burn her hair? Why did it burn so fast on this client and not on that client? And then I'll find myself, researching on the integumentary system of the buildup of the hair, right? So that's how it really started, just being curious.
And a curious mind is a good thing, though, especially when channeled in the right direction, because who would have thought, fast forward how many years later, you'd be an educator yourself, your curious mind, you're now an educator and working with Disney's Lion King, because who hasn't heard of Lion King? So how did you get started with Lion King?
Well, as I said again, it was just one of those things. I did not put myself out there. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's a flaw, but I'm very humble in my position that I'm given. I'm very humble with the knowledge that I've acquired over the years. I find that I am always being put in an environment where the gifts and the skills and the knowledge that I have, it's needed and appreciated and asked for.
And
So
open doors for you.
Yes, open doors. And this is one of those circumstances where with the Lion King, that I was just a mom on tour for my son. And my son told them, oh, she's a hairstylist, and Lion King being the predominantly African American cast, you know, I was there. I was asked to help with some of the hair care of the cast members. And going forward, my name has been thrown around, overseas with the directors and other head hairstylists. And I was asked to continue to counsel workshops, and a few of them flew in to sit in on the hair workshop that we've done for the cast members, just to educate them about hair care. And as a performer, it's different because it's a different type of talking, because you sweat as a performer, you produce more salt. So it was a different type of conversation than just a normal client.
Right.
So as you mentioned before, a lot of people are ignorant to the knowledge, especially in specific careers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I've channeled my knowledge and directed it and personalized it to their lifestyle. And that was when everything started. And fast forward to today, I am still counseling. And now I've been extended to the other productions across the world that the Lion King has. So now I'm counseling not just the American cast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also counseling the UK, the Asia, and going forward. So yes, I'm very grateful.
Oh, that's excellent news. Congratulations and very well done and much needed. So thank you so much for being willing to share that knowledge and the knowledge you have, because many times people have knowledge and they just keep it to themselves, like some prized possession. But thank you for being open to sharing it. So what I want to do is talk to you about some aspects of healthy hair and scalp. And one of the things that many people may have encountered in their time is things like hair loss.
Mm-hmm.
So what can people do? I mean, is there anything that people can do to prevent hair loss, or is it just one of those things that's genetic, and as time happens, you lose your hair and it thins? And if that does happen, is there anything that can be done to remedy it?
So hair loss, it's so many variations of why someone will lose hair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see it, if we have to be specific on something that cause, like on an everyday basis, that cause hair loss, I would easily say it may not be genetics, but it may be internal.
Okay.
where people everyday life, their stress level is one of, I feel like it's one of the main cause of hair loss. They will, people tend to think that it's the product you use, it's the, or something that it's outside, it's external, right? But
Okay, yeah.
sometimes really it comes from within. It comes from the lifestyle, it comes from what you eat. It also comes from just, even if you're taking a lot of medication, it comes from if you're not exercising a lot, you know, it's all of that. And understanding the buildup. I mentioned integumentary system, right? Just understanding the anatomy of hair first and where it stems from will help you understand the causes and the changes. One external factor for hair loss, I can say that we cannot control is environmental, right? And also seasonal weather. You know, hair loss happens during certain seasons as well. But it also stems, again, what are your diet in these seasons? And the extremities that everyone will experience hair loss at some point in their life. But the extremities and the consistency of hair loss is where you determine what's the cause.
Got you. And it's interesting that you mentioned things like hair loss, seasonal diet and exercise, because we all know that we're supposed to have a healthy diet and exercise. But it's just amazing that how many things it affects that we don't pay attention to, because many people think just diet and exercise just to look good, you know, because we all want that Coca-Cola shape, right? The hourglass figure. But then what about the other things? Your hair. Who would have thought that exercising will help with your hair growth and hair health? So that's very interesting that you mentioned that. And you mentioned things like stress. So, and when you and I were talking, you mentioned things like stress spots. What exactly is a stress spot?
So stress spot is really just an area on your scalp. It could be different areas. It could be more than one location on your scalp. It's a spot where it's itchy in that one location all the time. You can't stop itching it no matter what you do. It tends to get sore at some point. And when I say stress spot, it's almost like it's a stress so stress increases the cortisol level in the body, right? And the cortisol level have a direct correlation of your hair follicle. So whenever you start building up anxiety, and it's a direct connection to your follicle. So that's where, and there's certain parts of people, you know, everyone is made up differently. This is why the stress spot it's in different location. It depends on the type of stress they're going through at the moment. It can fall at the temple of your head, the middle of your head, or the nape, you know, of your head. And it triggers. So whenever you're going through stress, it triggers your follicles to have a reaction to whatever your body is going through internally. And then sometimes that can then turn into itchy flakiness. Sometimes if you have fungus or bacteria, the stress level will heighten that. So understanding what we go through in our life and paying attention to the reaction, I think one of the most visual references of being stressed and hair loss, it would be a stress spot, knowing your stress spot and paying attention to that.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when you first said it to me, and I just thought, oh my gosh, over the years, I've had stress spots and I just didn't know what it was. I put it down to, did I knock my head somewhere and I didn't realize or remember? Or not just did I knock my head, I was like, did something happen and I scratched my head too hard? Because I know that there was times when I was younger, I would go home and I would say like, Mum, can you look like right here? And I, pulling the hair to the side, like, can you look right here? Because it's really sore. And then I'm like, did I cut it? Is it cut?
Yes,
And
it's yes. It's those constant questions, especially when you're a student or you have like a lot of students in colleges, they go through a lot of stress. They'll see a lot of stress spots. If you're in a high paced job, like high stress job, you'll see clients like that with a lot of stress. But I've seen it a lot in college students mostly. It has no age. It has no age base, right? So even as a child, if your child is stressed out and they constantly touch a part of their hair, pay attention. And that's something that we need to be knowledgeable about, what goes on internally. That is, as I said, it's a correlation, and the stress triggers that the stress points, and then you build, as I said, flakes and soreness, and it keeps going. And if you're not having a good diet, if you're not eating vegetables and fruits, especially dark green vegetables, which heightens hair growth. If your diet is not in the right place, if you're not getting the right nutrients, if you're not exercising, if you're not even having a good breathing, or understanding how to calm yourself down with a breathing method, that it's yes, yoga is very important for stress, and it helps the hair grow as well. And we'll talk about that going forward more, but yeah.
That's so interesting, just knowing how to breathe. It's because, okay, we need to breathe to live, but wow, just knowing that actually will help with the stress spots in your head and things. And it's interesting that you say that, because as a coach, having studied stress management, I remember the first few modules was so hard because it was on the anatomy and illnesses and things like that. And I remember I was showing someone and he was like, are you sure they've given you the right modules? Because this is physiology and anatomy. And I was like, I don't know, because it was distance learning. So I'm like, I don't know, when there's stress management on here. So, and what it was is that in the first 3 modules, they were actually teaching you the effects of stress on the body.
Yep.
So when you hear that expression, stress kills, it's not just a cliche or an expression. It actually can kill you because of the way that it puts pressure on your organs and things like that. One thing that wasn't in that you have taught me, though, is that they didn't teach you about the effects of stress on your scalp and stress spots and hair loss. It was more about ulcers and high blood pressure and heart disease and things like that. So that is actually interesting to add, so that people to know, breathe, relax.
Tune in to your breathing method whenever you feel anxiety. Yes, we know how to breathe on an everyday basis, but do we really know how to breathe to navigate life? That's the buildup.
Latasha, that's a question for a whole nother podcast. Do we? And I like that. Do we know how to breathe to navigate life? Yeah. That is so profound right there. I think I may have to tweet that or something.
Yeah, because we, and that, and that's where, as I said, that's where the correlation, our scalp, when you think about our scalp, when you think about where the main function of our body, right? Where is that? That's our brain. And what's the closest thing to our brain?
So true.
And each hair shaft is connected to a blood vessel and a vein, right? Each one. So each follicle that the hair shaft is being that is sprout out of, it's connected. The root of that is connected to a blood vessel and a vein, right? And whatever we take, if we too much sodium, decreasing the red, if you're eating too much red meat, caffeine, the sugar intake. This is just four main things that we eat every day. Those are things that affects the hair, right? So, just as I said, all of that, we need to pay attention to all of that. And the stress spot is the first signal that something is going on. You may not feel it yet, but you feel it, that's where it will start. And people are not, they don't realize if you constantly, putting your fingers and itching it with your nails, that's another, you're irritating your scalp, and you're also, that's where the heightening of hair loss comes, because the stress alone doesn't take out the hair. It takes a while for your hair to disconnect from your root in order for it to come out. We go through that growth cycle, right? There's a cycle. We'll talk about that going into hair health, going on the next topic. But the constant irritation that we do with her fingers by itching, that's where we irritate the scalp, right? And that's where the hair loss starts.
That is so interesting. So basically, keep your hands out of your hair.
Yeah,
And it's quite funny because if you think about it, growing up, right, when and especially growing up in the West Indian culture, when you would have your hair braided for school, and you always get that knock on your knuckles, was what would they say? Keep your hands out of your hair.
Yep.
And I mean, I know at the time it was just so that you wouldn't keep disturbing them while they're trying to braid your hair, but that's something that we really could take on with us with through life, right? Keep
Yes.
and out your hair.
Yep.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned about the hair follicles. So can you go into a bit more detail about the hair follicles and inflamed follicles?
So inflamed follicles, right? It's basically, it's the medical term for inflamed follicles is folliculitis, right? It's caused by the damage of the hair follicle, which can then be vulnerable to infection and causing bacteria and fungus, right? And that's another thing. And you find that in a lot of male when they have ingrown hair. So that is the simplest, that is the easiest way to describe because you have inflamed follicles on wherever you grow hair, under your arm, like a boil. You know what a boil is, right?
Yeah.
That is a folliculitis. That is a different type of folliculitis. But just to simplify it so you can understand what that is. But when it comes to the scalp, it's different. It is still folliculitis, but it comes from irritation. When you like, see what style I have in the braids, and when the perimeter of your hair gets swollen, that's an inflamed follicle.
Okay.
You understand? And then, we get inflamed follicles by even being in in water that is not chlorinated, and there's bacteria built up. And you start itching a lot. And another thing with the stress part, when you start itching and it feels sore, if you look under the microscope, you'll see so many people have inflamed follicles. And that's another, inflamed follicles also is attached to hair loss. Because that is the storage for your hair. So your hair shaft is keratinized. It's dead hair. Once it comes out, protrudes out from the scalp, it's a keratinized hair. It's dead. But the health of your hair, it's below the scalp. It's inside the follicle where everything is happening. But once it protrudes out, it's dead. So taking care of the scalp is the most important to hair health. Because whenever it comes out, even though it's dead hair, the health of that keratinized hair depends on what goes on below. or
Okay.
within the follicle, within each follicle.
Mm.
So if you have a part of, if you have extensions and you do a lot of braiding, or you have a lot of irritation and you feel like you have a bump in your head, that's an inflamed follicle, and you keep itching that bump, or you have a pus bump, that's an inflamed follicle, which it can then turn into bacteria.
Okay. And then lead to hair loss.
And then lead to hair loss if it's not being taken care of the right way. It's also not contagious, but if it becomes a bacteria or fungus, that's another thing that when you go to your hair salon, or when you're sharing products in your household, combs and stuff like that, you want to make sure that it's sanitized.
Right.
You have your own products, so you have your own tools, because these are everyday things that people go through about, and it transfers, right? So folliculitis just stems from, you scratching and rubbing your head and irritating the follicle, tugging and twisting, all of that leads to folliculitis. But you see it more in males on an everyday basis in grown hair while they shave on their chin.
Okay. That's interesting. Because I remember somebody that I knew many years ago would always get these ingrown hairs, and he'd want you to pull them out with a tweezer. And I'm thinking, I'm sure that can't be healthy.
And so they think it's really just compression, warm compression. If you want to get rid of folliculitis, it's really warm compression. In the scalp, you see it mainly around the perimeter of your hairline, because that's the most sensitive parts. And then, if you want to, it's warm compression, using antibacterial soap, and for the scalp, for the face, just as I said, warm compression, and steaming. Steaming is such, when in China, everything that they do, it's warm water internally, right? For the health. It's the same thing for the skin.
Good to know.
Open up your pores, let that bacteria come out on its own without any kind of irritation.
Oh, that's good to know. So like when you see men going to have a shave and they put that warm towel on their face, that's basically what they're doing.
Yes, and exfoliation for the facial. Exfoliation, and also for the hair. If we're talking about hair, right? We're talking about hair, so implementing a cleansing shampoo. Then you do a moisturizing shampoo or repair shampoo, whatever shampoo you use after, but always do a cleansing shampoo, especially for low porosity hair. But you always want to cleanse your hair from everything else, outside particles, anything that internally that comes out, protrudes out your scalp. You want to make sure it's cleansed properly. And there certain ingredients in cleansing shampoo is different from moisturizing shampoo or repair shampoos.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you. And so staying on the topic on hair for a moment, gray hair. Because you mentioned something about gray hair to me last week. That's why I wanted to bring that up, because everybody just assumes that gray hair is a sign of aging, even though there are some people that we use the term going gray early. But you told me something that's not strictly correct, is it?
So it is sign of aging, but it's also when you find that you have someone who's in their 20s and they have a full head of hair. Okay, how can you argue that's a sign of aging, right?
Right, that's what I mean, yeah.
So with gray hair, what people don't know about gray hair, remember I mentioned that each hair shaft is connected to a blood vessel and a blood vein, a vein, right? And around that, there's a bulb, a hair bulb, that's the root that's connected. Then around that bulb, it's called a matrix, right? And within that matrix, you have cells. It's called the melanocyte cells that is connected to the root that is responsible for the color, the melanin of your hair. Now, it depends on your culture or your genetic makeup. That melanocyte cell will determine whether your hair will be black, white, brunette, whatever color genetically, right? Also, those cells, if genetically your family does not produce those cells a lot, you won't produce those cells. And then that's where the absence of those cells creates gray hair. Because if you're not, if you don't have the melanocyte cells around the hair bulb to produce the color in your hair, it's just going to be gray. It's not going to not grow. It's just that you're going to grow without color.
Okay, because I was looking at it and I'm literally a few weeks away from 50, and I have maybe a dozen gray hairs, if that.
Right.
Whereas by the time my mother was my age, she was significantly grayer than I am. And I'm just thinking it's just because, I'm young at heart and just, but it's, so explain to me how, because I know you said what will cause it that it goes without color. So is it all really just the opposite as to why I then don't have a lot of gray hair at my age? Or is it because they say gray hair is a sign of wisdom? Maybe it's because I just don't have any then.
No, not necessarily. It's really and it's something that I'm still so interested in learning, because I would love to know, because the older you get, it's like your whole body changes.
Yeah.
And that's one of those changes, the absence of that cell. And you have multiple cells. It's not just one cell within a hair shaft or around a hair bulb, right? It's multiple cells. So the absence of that throughout your hair cycle produces the hair growth. And understanding the hair cycle, why you are having it on certain hair shaft and not on the others, it's because that part of your hair may not be going through that cycle. You have three cycle, you have the anagen, catagen, and telogen cycle of hair growth, right? And you may be, a certain part of your hair may be in an anagen stage. The second part may be in certain part of your hair may be in the second stage, catagen, and certain parts may be in the telogen states, right? And that stage and that whole cycle takes a whole 7 years.
Okay.
And within that 7 years, that's when you see the absence of melanocyte cell happening, and certain parts of your hair will start becoming gray. And then some people, when you see them gray all over one time, it's just the absence of those cells going away more than the other parts from another individual. So it's all genetics. Yes, and it's all the way, it's just the way our body is built up, our internal system. And again, what we eat, what we eat, how the health of our body, internal, everything has to do, it's internal.
Wow, you literally,
right. There may be some external factors, but when you're talking about gray, when you're talking about the health of your hair, the health of your scalp, it's mostly internal. Some effects may be external, but it's mostly internal.
That's interesting that there's just so much connected to the fact that we pay so much importance, and we should pay importance to what we're putting in our body, because it literally does affect everything we do.
Yep.
Who would have thought, even down to your hair? And so this, you had mentioned about shampoos and using cleansing shampoo and using a moisturizing shampoo. But something that you had mentioned when we had previously spoken is about changing your shampoos and hair products seasonally.
Right. So I'm not sure if you personally experience this, but being in the salon for so many years, over the years, I've seen clients and being in New York State, where the weather changes. Most of the time you have clients that in the winter, they start experiencing a lot of breakage, a lot of dryness. And, that would be one of the main concerns. Their scalp is dry, their hair is dry. but not really understanding that, okay, in the winter, you're using more hot water, right? Because it's colder, you're staying warm, right? Sometimes the water, it's more harsher. Your type of water is harsher in the winter, or, it's just hard. It's just your harsh water, one, heat, two, weather, it's cold, so you're not drinking a lot of, you're not hydrating. And when you're hydrated, you don't experience dry scalp as much as if you're not hydrated. When you're hydrated, you experience more dry scalp. Also, we're not doing a lot more exercises, and we're not eating as how we'll eat fruits and vegetables in the summer, right? So our whole system changes in the winter. And again, focusing on hair, it's a part of our buildup. It changes as well. So if we're using the same shampoo in the summer, it's not going to have the same effect on your hair in the winter, because your hair changed. You have more dry scalp. You have more dry, you're experiencing more loss because your hair is brittle and frizzy because of the dryness, because you're not hydrated. You're not, you're not eating as much as you'll eat in the fruits and vegetables as how you'll eat in the summer. So now it's time for you to change to something that moisturize your hair, implementing more mask for your hair, implementing hydration treatment for your hair. Hydration, that in hydration treatment is really just applying hydration steam.
Right.
Opening your cuticles to get the steam in, to make sure that your hair is hydrated the proper way.
And because what it's like, you find a product, it works, and you stick with it. Because I know that I've been guilty of that. I've been using the same product in my hair for the same shampoo and conditioner in my hair, I would say, for the past 3 or so years. Never thought to change it. And I think maybe because of living in Florida and the weather's just the same, so it may be that didn't apply to me. But now that I've moved to an area where, Lord help me, but it snows in the winter and it's hot in the summer. So, but even before that, living in the UK, where you had the different seasons and the change of the seasons, never stopped to consider to change product. And also, on another note there, Latasha, so even if you're not one of those people that washes your hair yourself, if you go to your hairdressers, I don't recall my hairdresser changing the products seasonally. So shouldn't the hairdressers be doing that too?
Now, I'm not gonna knock any hairdressers and how they perform their service, but many hairdressers are still uneducated. And I don't blame them. Because even being licensed, my love for hair care leads me to seek knowledge, right? And take classes and learn all of these things. And you may find, because some of these things we don't learn in school. Like, we don't learn about kinky texture hair in school. So most stylists, if you're not an African American who already have kinky texture hair and know how to do your own hair, and try to, use your knowledge of what you learn in school and take care of kinky texture hair. If you're not that stylist, you're not going to learn how to do a kinky textured client. So I don't blame it on the stylists themselves. There are a few stylists out there who go out and seek knowledge beyond their license, because there's so much more to learn about hair care and health, scalp health. They would have to go out there and seek it for themselves. So if a stylist is out there not educating, they're just focused on styling. Now, I'm just not a hairstylist that focuses on styling. I focus more on healthcare. Styling will always be there. It's there. But the health of it, for me, I focus on that because that makes my hairstyling better.
Yes, and that makes so much sense, right?
Yeah. So if the stylist is not doing that, then I honestly, that's just their thing. Now, in my chair, my clients know. And I don't use a lot of products because talk about products. A lot of products are made from chemicals.
Yeah.
And even in that, straying away from having at least a good 10 good products in your salon as a stylist. That's what I think. I have a list of products that I use. And I don't go out there and try multiple products. I read the ingredients, certain chemicals, certain proteins. Like we'll talk about hair porosity and the type of hair people have. Not one type of shampoo works for every type of hair.
Right.
So I have to have that variety, but my variety is specific because I choose not to use a lot of products that are made from chemical.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah, and you know, I wasn't actually saying it to knock a hairstyle.
Yeah.
I was just really saying it because I just in speaking to you and thinking about it, it literally was just like, hang on a second, because I know that before I decided to go all natural with my hair, I was using a particular brand of hair care products, and I had been using that brand for absolute years, never changed it or never depending on the season, because I didn't know to. It was just literally, this is what works for me, this is good for my hair, it makes my hair nice, I'm going to use it. I then went natural, started using a different set of products in my hair. And because when did I start going natural? 2018. I've been using the same products ever since. And I know, and even though you don't always see the bottle that the hairstylist is using, it's got that familiar smell and everything. So it was just more a question of, hold on a second, there's a lot more to this than just being at home. And when you take care of your hair at home, it's also when you're in the salon, just making sure that, because to be honest, I think, I want to say most of us have had some kind of hairdressing nightmare horror story
Of course.
that we could tell. So it wasn't really to knock anybody, because
No, we're not. Yeah, but I just have to say that.
Yeah. And
as a fellow hairstylist.
very true. And obviously, you know, unity and solidarity
Exactly.
in the profession. So it's, and in saying that, with the shampoos and the products, now we had spoken about things like hair oils and hair porosity, and again, being completely ignorant. And I remember the first time I read about hair porosity was in a magazine, and it had like 3 diagrams on, if your hair floats, or if your hair goes in the middle, or if your hair sinks, it means it's medium, high, or low porosity. And I tried it and I couldn't figure it out, because my hair kind of, some of it was at the top and some of it went down. So it's like, what does it mean? So can you talk to us a bit about what is hair porosity?
Okay, so before we get into hair porosity, let's talk about, let me just say this. Determining the factors in determining your hair type, which includes the porosity. It's 5 things, right? And this helps knowing how to have choosing the right products. But knowing these 5 types, the factors that determine your hair type. It's the hair density, the diameter of your hair, the elasticity of your hair curl pattern, and your porosity, right? So those are the 5 factors in knowing the type of products that you need to use. The factors that you need to know the type of hair you have.
Okay, can you repeat those 5 things again, please?
Okay, so the 5 things are hair density, the diameter of your hair, the elasticity of your hair, the curl pattern, your hair's curl pattern, because we all have different curl patterns, and the porosity.
Okay, and that makes up your hair type.
Right, that's how you determine your hair type.
Okay.
Right, and knowing those 5 things helps you with product selection.
Right? How would an everyday person find that out?
Your stylist should be the one telling you. So we're in a different era. we wouldn't be having this conversation 3 years ago.
Right.
Right. So, and a lot of people really go to the salon to get styled. I find that even some clients, they'll come in and, I have an open dialogue. I'm like, what's going on with your hair? If I see a spot, I'm like, what happened? I said, I ask questions as a stylist. I ask questions, and that opens up a conversation on me imparting my knowledge onto them. Right.
Okay.
Now, if a stylist is not that type of stylist, you won't learn this. Or if that stylist don't go out to learn this, they won't be able to talk about it. If they're just focusing on style. Now, I am hair health first. So I have this conversation now, because you'll find that a lot more people know about hair health because they're researching it, because we're in that time that people are focusing more on their hair health and the scalp and wearing their natural tresses, So we wouldn't be having this conversation before, but making awareness now, you'll find that's happening. Clients are now asking the right questions to be educated, and stylists are now going out to learn more.
Okay.
Jobs are being more educated to hire, understanding culturally, the importance of hair and their styles in certain culture. So everyone across the world, in America, really, across the board, they're more embracing the changes that are happening. But it starts with each person, each individual, not just the stylist, the title stylist. It starts with the individual wanting to accept themselves, their hair as is, and then learning about it in order for this conversation to continue. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, and you're right, it does go hand in hand, and that is very true, because I must admit, I say now, if I realized that my own natural hair was this easy to manage, I would have gone natural years ago, many years before I actually did. But it was just one of those things where it just automatically assumed that it was going to be difficult to manage, and putting the relaxer in made it easier. So, and it was never a thing where I'd never heard of hair porosity up until literally a few short years ago, because I read it in a magazine. And I think because I don't tend to read magazines that often, but when I'm traveling, I just always grab one. And it just happened to be at that time in an airport. And it was just like, okay, I need to test this. But I never thought to ask my hairstylist if they can instruct me on what my hair type is, to then ask the question of what product should I be putting in my hair.
Exactly. So the porosity refers to how well your hair is able to absorb and hold moisture, right? And it is affected by the flexibility of the outer hair layer called the cuticle, which determines how easily moisture and oils pass in and out of your hair. So that's how we know, that's the porosity.
Okay.
Porosity is mainly genetic until it's changed by a chemical.
Okay.
Right? We're born with the type of, there's 3 types of porosity. But I'll just go over this before I go into the type of porosity.
Okay.
It's mainly genetic. And it can also be affected by external factors like exposure to heat, like the sun. The sun can change your porosity.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yes, heat treatments, chemical processing. Yeah. So there are 3 types of porosity: low porosity, normal porosity, and high porosity. Low porosity is sometimes like it's not enough moist. Low porosity, your cuticles are closed. So it's not enough moisture doesn't absorb as quickly, especially thick, heavy creams and oils doesn't absorb inside a low porosity hair as quickly as it would a high porosity hair.
Okay.
And with low porosity hair, it's healthy hair, but it needs assistance helping the products to absorb in a hair shaft.
Right.
And it's almost like a fish scale. I use this fish scale. I don't know why I got this analogy, but I just use, it's not even an analogy. I don't know why I use this example of a fish scale, but it's like the easiest thing to me.
Okay.
You know how a fish scale is flat on the surface when on the skin, and you can smooth over it without feeling nothing.
Yeah.
That's what low porosity hair feels like. Now, when you're scaling a fish, if you go the opposite direction and you feel the ridges, the scales, right? Flips up. That's what high porosity hair feels like.
Right.
So the cuticles are open on high porosity hair. So products will absorb quickly. It doesn't matter the texture or the thickness of the product. It absorbs quickly, but because the cuticles are open, it doesn't retain the moisture.
Of course,
so it dries out, right? It dries out quickly. While with low porosity hair, if you assist the product to be absorbed by steaming in the product, opening the cuticles and closing it back. This is why they say rinse with warm water to open the cuticles, close with cold water to close it.
Got you.
Right? Rinse with cold water to close the cuticles. That's for low porosity hair. Right? So with low porosity hair, if the product is absorbed, it retains it for a long period of time, a couple of days, week, 2 weeks.
Okay.
Right? But with the heavy cream, thick cream, you can say, all right, low porosity is hydrophobic. So you have to force water, force liquid, force anything on the type of hair. You have to help it. With high porosity hair, it's unhealthy hair. It is damaged hair. And you can be born with low porosity hair. You can put a relaxer. Your hair is going to change to either normal porosity or high porosity.
Okay.
So chemical changes the porosity of your hair.
Makes sense.
If you're in the sun, the heat from the sun, if you're in a really hot sun, you ever seen someone that stays in the sun for a while and the color of their hair changes? That's how
that would be me.
UV, right? So just imagine you can see the physical change of the hair. Just imagine what you're not seeing. So the change of the porosity is what you're not seeing. Right? So the sun changes either from low to normal or from low to high, normal to high porosity. It's hard to go from high porosity back to normal, back to low porosity. Because your cuticles are damaged, so it splits, it breaks. This is where a lot of split ends comes in now into action. And we'll talk about split ends after.
Okay. Thank you for that. So now that you've mentioned the different types of porosity for hair, so for low porosity hair, because I've just discovered I have low porosity hair, which means I have healthy hair. So that means that because I use Jamaican black castor oil in my hair. So, but I do use heat to get it to sink in. I didn't realize that's what I was supposed to do. I just thought I was just putting it in and giving my hair a bit of a treatment and just going on my way. So we know what to do for that. So what types of products should we be using on our hair depending on the porosity then?
So with high porosity hair, you want to do a lot of protein treatments. You want to do anything, so high porosity hair tends to feel dry a lot. It's frizzy, it tangles easily, it's prone to breakage, and it rarely shines, it rarely looks shiny. First, we have to know what we're looking for, right? It really looks shiny, and it as I mentioned, it absorbs products easily, right? High porosity hair needs needs protein treatment, deep conditioning, sealing with butters and oils. And I'll suggest oils that are thicker, like Jamaican black castor oil, the thicker end of the oils, because remember, high porosity hair absorbs quickly, but it also doesn't retain. So using heavier products and natural oils help high porosity hair. Aloe vera and apple cider vinegar to maintain the pH balance of the hair.
Okay.
Right. So those are just a few things that for someone who is chemically treated, when it comes to color, relaxer, damaged by the sun, or feel like they have high porosity hair. Those are some things, 5 things that I just mentioned that are good for that type of hair. Okay. With low porosity hair, remember I say it's hydrophobic. So Jamaican black castor oil, I always tell people, it's like one of the #1 thing for people to use, but it does not work for people with low porosity hair because it's too thick for it to absorb. Yes, applying the heat opens it, but it's so much that you're not getting all the nutrients that you need. Okay. From the Jamaican black castor. It's just really, really thick. And if you see what a low porosity hair looks like under a microscope, it's there. Even if you steam it to open the cuticles, it doesn't even open as much as you want it to. Oh, for it to absorb. So I'll suggest for low porosity hair, use lighter oils. Like our natural sebum oil is really light. We produce natural sebum oil with all the nutrients that we need for our scalp, for our hair health. But the one of the oils that are the closest to our natural sebum oil would be jojoba oil. Coconut oil is good. Some coconut oil doesn't work for every type of hair. So I will say sometimes, mix it with something else, like tamanu oil or jojoba, lighter oils. Okay. Lighter products.
What was that word you mentioned? What?
Tamanu oil.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I don't want to get into. We'll get into oils. Oils is a total different topic.
Like, what?
And every essential oil has some form of hair and scalp benefit. Okay. But low porosity hair does not like protein, and a lot of conditioners that are made out there has more than, even though the terms are in as scientific form or whatever name, some conditioner have like 3 ingredients that are protein based, and that is too much protein for low porosity hair. Okay. If low porosity hair needs protein, go with a natural form of protein like avocado or egg treatment. That's natural and it's not heavy.
Okay. So I'm glad you mentioned the avocado and egg, because I remember many years ago, and I shared this story with you previously. Yeah. So I was told about all the things that are good for hair. And this is in the days when I used to relax my hair. So I didn't try the avocado because I was told like things like avocado, and I was even told like beer and egg. And I thought, well, those 3 things, I don't like either one of those 3. Don't like beer, hate eggs, and at the time I didn't like avocado, but the egg was the easiest thing to get hold of. So I went out and I bought 6 eggs, and I beat it all up and I put it in my hair. But I didn't stop to think that if I added hot water, I would make scrambled eggs. So what I did, as I was washing it out, I was washing my hair out with hot water, and then ended up having to spend ages picking scrambled egg out of my hair. So you just reminded me of that story of me trying to use something to be healthy, and I never ever tried it again. But I will try it again now that you've mentioned it, but I will use cold water this time to rinse it out. So literally you just get the egg or the avocado, or could you mix the egg and the avocado and apply it to your hair?
You can, okay. But that's 2 forms of protein. And if you have low porosity hair, I wouldn't suggest it. Okay. You see how easy it is to do too much of one thing if you don't know the type of hair you have. That's the mistake that a lot of people make.
Got you. So it's either or then, either the egg or
You don't need, for low porosity hair, you don't need that much protein.
Okay.
It's either one or the other. Remember, low porosity hair is already healthy. Don't break what's not broken. Don't fix what's not broken. Right? Don't try to add too much on something that is not broken. Right? Okay. We're talking about already healthy hair.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to know.
So when you're talking about something that's already healthy, what else are you going to do to make it more healthy?
Very true. Very true. And I only
maintain the health of it.
And I only know this because in speaking to you previously, and you mentioned about looking at your hair under a microscope. So I went out and I bought one. I went and bought one of these microscopes. So they don't cost an awful lot of money. I think this one cost me less than $30 to buy. And I was able to look at it and I'm able to see and now know the porosity of my hair.
Right.
So I would encourage anybody to go out if you really are serious about your health hair and using the right products. As Latasha said, I would encourage anybody to go out and get one. I bought that one, like I said, less than $30 from Amazon. And it's not like you just use it the one time, is it, Latasha? Because you mentioned that your hair porosity can change depending on what the seasons and what you're putting in there. So that's actually good to know. So I now know how to look after my low porosity hair. Me sitting there, had my hair, like pulled my hair all out and just sitting there, putting this thing over it, trying to see. And just so that now I know, because how best I can take care of my hair, because I've been doing it wrong. I've put my hands up. I actually have been looking after my hair wrong and putting the wrong products in my hair. But now I can start using the right products.
Right.
So thank you. And so one of the things you mentioned is about things like split ends and damage and breaking. And one of the things I want to touch on as well with you is washing your hair, because a lot of the things that you've shared with us can be used on any hair type, regardless of your ethnicity. Things like gray hair, stress spots, hair loss, for inflammation of the follicles. But I want to talk a little bit about what we as Black people, and I'm not just going to say African American because there's Black people all over the world. We tend not to wash our hair that often because that's what we were told growing up. Your hair doesn't need to be washed that often, right?
So yeah. And that it's almost like we're the listeners to everything that they've known, to uneducate themselves, to to learn again, right? We're saying whatever you knew about hair care before, if it's nothing that we're discussing right now, throw it out the door.
Yeah, press the delete button.
yes. And let's and I'm not saying everything. I'm gonna stand by everything that I'm saying. Because I've done my research, I've done my work.
As you should.
And I have my experience under my belt. So I'm gonna stand by everything. And it's information that's out there for anyone who wants to learn.
Latasha, so let's touch on washing your hair, because as we mentioned that growing up, we were really taught that we don't need to wash our hair that often. Is that fact or is that fallacy?
Well, depending on the type of hair you have, it can be both. Okay. So one, washing, depending on what you mentally think the time period of washing your hair means, right? Some people will not wash their hair. 2 months will pass and you won't wash your hair. And I think that's way too long, right? And that's when you do a protective style, right? And you find that in the kinky type hair in the African American culture, they tend to do a lot more protective style because their hair are more protected under, because it's fragile and it's easier to maintain. But when you think about what our scalp naturally produce, what our body naturally produce to maintain our hair, like sweating, especially if you're someone who works out a lot, you sweat, and what comes out of sweat, or it's salt, right? So the benefit of sweating, sweating from your scalp helps to unclog your hair follicle. It releases any buildup inside your hair, your pores, and it allows your hair to grow. But that's the pro of sweating, right? But when that sweat when it dries, it turns into salt. That salt, that's a buildup on your scalp. Then, and it contains lactic acid, which is not good for your hair, and it dries the hair, and that stunts the hair growth. Right. So with knowing that part of it, and then remember, we do produce natural sebum oil, and that natural sebum oil has the natural nutrients that our body produces to help for our hair health. And then that distributes to the shaft of the hair. If we are doing protective style and we're not washing our hair often enough, and when I say wash, I mean shampoo and conditioning at least every 2 weeks, with co-washing in between. And when I say co-washing, meaning rinsing out the outside particles with conditioner and water, or just warm if you have a protective style, rinsing out the salt without killing the natural sebum oil.
Okay.
Because if shampoo is what takes out that natural sebum oil and cleanse the hair, right? But we want to think about it like this. We do produce the sweat, salt, but we also produce natural sebum oil. Together being left in the hair, the sweaty, salty, the sweat that produces the salt eliminates the nutrients that the natural sebum hair has. So in return, our hair becomes dry.
Right.
And this is with really kinky type hair. You see that more often. Kinky type hair and type 3C hair. We go into like the type of hair, another segment, but in the kinky type hair, that's what we do, more protective styling. We don't wash our hair often enough. But even if we don't want to shampoo and conditioning, I would suggest to my clients implement co-washing to rinse the hair and to hydrate your hair.
Okay.
So your salt, the natural salt that you produce won't affect your hair, because there are pros and cons, but it's more cons than pros because of the lactic acid.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you for that. This is a lot to take in and to remember, and because it's just, like you said, really just erasing so much of what we have been taught coming up over the years. So I'm going to start really paying attention to the temperature of washing my hair, because literally just get in the shower, wash my hair. I don't think about changing the hot water, the cold water, and things like that. And I must admit,
our scalp.
Yeah, and I must admit, sometimes, myself wearing protective styles, I don't stop to think about doing anything to my own hair in between, because I'm thinking that the protective style is enough.
And even with protective style, because our hair is dry underneath, or our scalp get dry doing the protective style, what you're doing is that dryness is the salt that is drying on your top of your scalp, which is clogging your pores, right? And clogging your follicle, right? Where it's blocking the sebum oil from being produced. And then you're adding oil, because we're not really supposed to oil our scalp.
Yeah.
That's something.
Right.
Unlearn, and undo.
You know how many people's minds you've just blown, just literally right there with those few words. We are not supposed to oil our scalp. Those 8 words have just like blown a lot of people's minds right now, because that's not what we were taught growing up. And I don't even want to mention the products, but you've got like your Ultra Sheen, your Dax, your like India, all of those different types of things that you sat there with, holding it, getting your hair, your scalp, as we call it, you're getting your scalp greased, right? And so now to know that, hold on, no.
Yeah, because it's really simple, right? You're clogging all of it. You're clogging your pores. You're clogging your follicle. We produce, our body is amazing, right? It's amazing. It's built up in an amazing way. It cleans itself, it produces, it gives us, it heals itself. It's the same thing for the hair. We produce that natural oil that we need, you know, and the reason why we tend to oil our scalp is because we do these protective style, or we don't hydrate our hair by washing it, cleaning it, cleansing our hair often enough, and maintaining the health and, you know, the hydration of our hair. Why we oil the scalp, because then the buildup, the constant buildup is what creates the dryness. Right? And what you're doing, that buildup is already there. It's like you're adding layers and layers and clogging. You know, that's what it's really doing. You can oil the shaft of your hair. I'm not saying don't put oil on your hair. I'm saying don't put oil on your scalp.
Right.
Because we produce the natural oils naturally. What we need to do is hydrate, especially kinky type hair. Hydration, internally, drink more water, eat more vegetables, hydrate externally. Water is a mist. Hydration, mist your hair. Soft water, find a soft water. You don't need to use a harsh water from the pipe. Use bottled water, put in a spray bottle, or use rose water, aloe vera, and vegetable glycerin. That's a natural 3-ingredient, or you can add essential oils like peppermint and lavender. That's a natural 5-ingredient hydration mist that is healthy for your hair.
Okay, and you can just get those oils, put it in a spray bottle, and just spray it on your hair?
So vegetable glycerin, rose water, and rose water is a natural toner too, but let's talk about rose water. Rose water is beneficial for the hair instead of regular water, and aloe vera juice. Those 3 main ingredients added with your favorite essential oils, drops of it, that's a natural mist, hydration mist. And that you don't have to oil your scalp. You spray that hydration mist and hydrate your hair.
That's good to know.
Build up. It's a constant buildup. That's blocking you're not allowing your hair to breathe, your scalp to breathe, your pores to breathe. I'm sure you looked at your scalp under the microscope and you see the little holes and you see your follicles, the shape of it. So in the African American culture, the kinky type hair, let me stop saying culture, the kinky type hair, their follicles are shaped like a semicircle, right? So it's more closed than someone with like the Asian culture, straight hair, right? Their follicles it's circles. So they produce more oils, and whatever new product they put on their hair, it absorbs well because it goes into the follicle because of the shape. For the kinky type hair, because the follicles are not able to, your scalp is not able to breathe as much. So constant product buildup creates dryness and flakes. Dandruff. That's where dandruff and flakes then comes from. Also internally, if you're not drinking enough water. But hydrate is what I would add to this, to anyone who has dry hair. Hydration should be your best friend.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And it's true, because I know that we all know we're supposed to drink a lot of water, but it's just one of those things where we think we can give it a miss or we can substitute it for other things. But yeah, we really need to be paying attention to, like you said, hydrate. So thank you so much for that. And I'll try the egg thing again without making scrambled eggs. And considering I don't even like eggs, I've got scrambled eggs in my hair, but I will definitely give that a try.
You have other things. If you don't like, you don't have to use egg. Not a lot of people like. I don't use eggs in my hair. I use it in some clients' hair. I use more avocado. Like my hair is high porosity because it's colored, right? It's treated. I lift my hair. But for low porosity hair, like things like sunflower seed oil, grape seed oil, I mentioned jojoba oil, almond oil, or argan oil is good. One thing I want to point out with low porosity, because you have low porosity hair, Allison, is fenugreek seed oil, or just fenugreek seed alone. being absorbed in water, warm water overnight as a rinse. That fenugreek seed has like vitamins and minerals, and it contains copper, iron, and zinc, calcium, and minerals that it's very beneficial to hair growth, and it works well for for low porosity hair.
You know, I'm ordering all those things today. Today, like today.
Well, you know, you mentioned about the bear. Actually, I have the bear in my notes, but guess what? Bear rings is actually good for high porosity hair, damaged hair.
Okay.
Bear rings.
At the time when I was reading that, I would have had high porosity hair because I used to color and relax my hair.
Okay, so right. Yeah. So bear rings for high porosity, since I mentioned about what's good for low porosity hair, simple thing. High porosity hair, bear rings, black tea oil rings. Yes, coffee rings. But as a disclaimer, if you have gray hair and you're doing a coffee rings, coffee is a natural coloring.
Okay, some people might like that though. It's cheap hair dye and no chemicals. So you never know.
It's the natural, but I have to make that. I have to say.
You know, Latasha,
just in case.
You never know. You may now find some people that's throwing out all their hair coloring in the cupboards and just like, listen, I got coffee and it's cheaper.
Actually, some of my clients, I don't use rings. I use henna. Okay. As a color, or I use a natural color shampoo that is plant-based to color gray hair. When I tell you I stray away from chemical, as much as I can. Unless a client really wants a certain product, that's when I'll use it. Okay. Even after educating them, then I'll use it. But
okay, because everybody, you know,
everyone is on. It doesn't matter how much you want to tell someone or if someone knows. It's really their personal preference, right? You know, with high porosity hair, as I said, Jamaican black castor oil works for them. The purified version.
Okay.
There's a difference because Jamaica, if it's not purified, it has a lot of salt.
Oh.
Yeah. And we already produce natural salt. And that's another thing. That's another topic. We may have to have a part 2 in this one.
Yeah, because honestly, I was saying to you, Tasha, if my keyboard didn't make so much noise, I'd be on there like Fenugreek Seed Oil stuff like now. Because because there's a lot to know. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of people doing it wrong through no fault of their own. It's just that you never stop to think about what should I use in my hair because of the porosity, because who's ever heard of porosity hair type and all kinds of things, you know? And then especially when you're using things that are natural ingredients, you think you're doing good because it's natural, not realizing that yes, it's natural, however, not your hair type. So this has been so informative. So Latasha, I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us to share some of your knowledge and your education with us. And as I mentioned, Latasha can be found in Queens, New York. The salon name is Snakx, spelled Snakx. Snakx Beauty Spa in Queens, New York. You can find Latasha on Instagram. The Instagram is L Days Experience, spelled is the letter L, Days, Dayes, and the word experience. And you can make an appointment to go and see her. She only sees clients by appointment only. So that's how you can get hold of Latasha. Latasha, thank you so much for imparting your knowledge and spending time with us here on Conversations with Alison J, The Journey to Hair. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
Yeah, great. You're very welcome, my dear. Take care now.
Take care.
Bye-bye.